All right.
Exciting stuff here. Josh mentioned this at the top of the call, but we will be raffling off some gift cards. We have our first one coming up here. So this will be for $100. We'll be giving out to later in this presentation that will be worth $200. We are still waiting on the prize link from HubSpot. So we'll be sending the winners' prizes out most likely in the next week or so, but we'll keep you posted as soon as we have more information and we have that link. We'll get it over to you. I'm going to go ahead and generate a random name. Drum roll, please. Let's make sure that they are there. And alrighty, I see. Let me pick again. Katie Joy Doing. I apologize in advance. I'm going to be butchering some names here as we do this, but Katie, you are our winner.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Of course, we will get that information over to you as soon as we have it, but congratulations and others to come as we go. And yeah, again, you get to hear me butcher names, so I'll do my best.
And she was the first one here.
Wow.
Nice. Great.
All right. So I think we can jump right into it. Quick intro for me. For anybody who hasn't worked with me, anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Zachary Ware. I've got, like most of us, 2 lives I lead, my work life and my not-work life. At work, I'm a RevOps specialist. I've likely worked with quite a few on the call. Everything from setting up and configuring HubSpot from a brand new portal to jumping into existing portals and helping to start cleanup and kind of get things streamlined, to understanding sales processes, doing just a little bit of sales enablement support through all things coaching from an inbound marketing perspective through a HubSpot perspective and everything in between. If you know me, you also know that I am a big AI truther, a big advocate of AI, which is extremely topical because that's a big thing that we're going to be talking about here very shortly is HubSpot's AI agents. Additionally, I've been with P80 for coming up on like 7 years now, which is pretty wild to think. Done just about everything under the sun that there is to do with an agency like P80, everything from SEO and paid media management and the strategy and the RevOps and coaching, and it's just an absolute blast. I absolutely love it. In my not work life, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a runner who had to take a couple months off due to an Achilles injury, but got back out last week and was immediately humbled after a couple miles. Big techie in my personal life. I love diving into things, understanding how they work, and sometimes putting them back together successfully, sometimes not. And I am also a massive Bills fan, though jury's still out on if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it just depends on where we're at in the season. So we're going to be going through quite a bit today. We're going to be first and foremost talking about what a customer agent is within HubSpot. We're going to be diving into how you can set up your own customer agent, talking about all the little configuration considerations that need to be made as you're setting it up initially or as you're resetting it up as time goes on. We're going to be talking all about how you can deploy your agent, analyze its performance, and you're going to hear me harp on this probably 15 times throughout our time together today. But testing it, and making sure that revisions are made where necessary. Towards the end, as we get into the questions, I have a list of some very common questions that either I usually receive or I just hear people ask pretty frequently when it comes to this particular agent within HubSpot. And then we'll have time at the end for any Q&A that you guys might have. If there are questions that you have as we go, please feel free to drop them in our meeting chats. Josh and Michaela, I believe, are going to be taking a look at that. And then once we get to the end, anything that wasn't answered in chat, we'll have a couple minutes dedicated just to go through and start chatting about. All right, so let's dive right in. What even is the customer agent in HubSpot? Well, if you've poked around in HubSpot, or if you just know what an agent is from an AI perspective or from a computer perspective, it's your AI-powered conversational agent. It's there to help your team. It's there to help your site visitors. Quick note on that. There are different channels that the agent can be deployed in. For most of today's discussion, I'm going to be focusing on the chat perspective, like embedding the agent as a chatbot on your site. There are also other channels that we'll explore later too. But it's there to help your site's visitors by doing things like learning from your own data sets that you upload, that you feed it with, that you train it on, answering your visitors' questions conversationally and in plain text, breaking down the ambiguity, giving them exactly what they need. And then routing your visitors, importantly, to a human when it's warranted. That's a big point of setup that we're going to take a more in-depth look at later, but one that I know a lot of people are very concerned with, making sure that when it's time, a human can step in and take over. So ultimately, what does it do for us? The end result of deploying one of these agents is hopefully a better user experience, better on-site conversion metrics, and more free time for your service and potentially sales teams to help other customers rather than to continually answer some of those more intro-level questions or those common questions that your team is already getting regularly and having to answer. So when we think about the customer agent, there are some things that it can do and some things that it can't do. So when we're thinking about the agent as it stands today, some things that it can do and can do really well are answering questions conversationally that your users are already asking, learning from your data sources over time, intelligently and dynamically handing off conversations to your team internally, again, when it's warranted, helping you identify where the knowledge gaps are in your resources, not just for use within the agent itself, but for use elsewhere. And then ultimately being able to cite sources if you elect to enable citations, so that as users are asking questions, they can be certain that there's little to no hallucination there with any of the answers that has been given. They can go and corroborate anything. But what can't it do? Well, the big thing that it can't do right now that I think some people might be looking for is just replacing your entire sales or services team. It's there to be a tool that they can leverage to help them free up time to work on other higher priority tasks, not something that's necessarily there to replace them at this point. So, big question, who actually needs the customer agent? I would say really it's any teams that get asked common questions time and time again. You might have it in your own internal database of frequently asked questions stored in a snippet or a playbook or some other resource for your teams to reference anyway, so that same common answer is given out each time those questions are asked. Right now, it might also just exist in your sales or your service reps' heads. That's okay. It can be put on paper and used elsewhere too. Or any teams that have or can create those resources or those knowledge bases, either internal or external, to actually start fueling the agent with. Really, any teams that want to improve their website users' experience or improve the experience of their service or their sales teams and start to free up some time, like I mentioned, to focus on those other higher priority items. And then finally, those teams that really want insights into what kind of questions are your customers or your potential customers actually asking time and time again. They might be people who don't even get through to your customer service team because of one reason or another, they're inaccessible, or there's such low-level questions that they're trying to answer them on their own without having to reach out, raise their hand, and say, I have these questions or these concerns. HubSpot can start to give you those insights. So all that's well and good, but how do we actually set up the agent within HubSpot? Well, thankfully, setting up your agent is extremely, extremely easy initially. It can take as little as, I'd venture to guess, 30 minutes for just about any of us on the call today. However, with most things, really, we need to pay attention to the detail here. We'll get into all those small details here shortly as well. But to create the agent itself, it's just a few easy steps. Create the base agent. In HubSpot, you can navigate the service, customer agent, and set up your agent. Then assign a quick name and a personality. Do you want it to be serious? Do you want it to be a little bit humorous? Do you want it to be whatever else you set it as, starting to adapt your brand personality and your brand voice. Teach it initially with what it needs to know. Give it its initial set of resources, whether those are internal or external knowledge bases, website pages, landing pages, blog pages, news pages, PDFs, images, whatever else you have to train it with. Get it what it needs to know so that it can start answering those common questions and start performing for your team. Assign the agent to a channel. So currently those live channels are Facebook, WhatsApp, live chat, and email. And again, for our purposes today, we're primarily going to be focusing on that live chat functionality, though all of the considerations, all the little nuances, and even all the analytics that we're going to be looking at directly apply to these other channels as well. The biggest difference is going to be the deployment and likely the tone that it adapts. And then finally, configuring the handoff process to a human. So understanding what is going to actually warrant the agent to say something isn't right, I need to reach out, I don't know the answer to that, and defining it. So setup can be a breeze, but what are all those small little details that we need to pay attention to that really elevate it and really let it be performative for us? So for this, I feel that's going to be better shown and not told, but there's going to be a few things that we take a look at here in HubSpot here in just a sec. We're going to take a look at exploring the agent's identity. So that's its core identity, as well as some brand new guidelines that we can now set for it. Updating our agent's knowledge, the content sources, even using potentially our own CRM data to fuel the agent if we're able to identify who that contact is based on a known or associated email address that we ask for. And then the deployment into different channels. So I'm going to hop into HubSpot here. And the first tab that we're going to be taken into is our overview tab, but I'm going to jump into our management tab and then into performance. So first and foremost, can you guys see my screen okay? Do I need to zoom in at all? All good? Perfect. So as I mentioned, a few things in here that we want to take a look at. On the left-hand side, we've got our navigation. We're going to take a look at the agent's identity, how to update its knowledge over time, and then how we can actually deploy the agent. So under the agent's identity, like I mentioned, we have the two core settings, the core identity, and then some guidelines. Core identity is very high level. What's your agent's name? What does it look like? Are we personifying it, or are we letting it remain this abstract AI tool that you want to call attention to in that way? What kind of personality should it assume at a very high level, outside of the specific tone that it's using for different inquiries or different questions that it's receiving? And then if it is being used in any voice capacity moving forward, what kind of a voice should it use? Very, very high level things for the core identity. But where we can start to get significantly more nuanced with it is in the new guidelines section. So in here, we have just a few different sections that we can start to fill out. Things like the tone, the response style, scripted responses for common answers that we need to make sure are always represented or answered the same way every single time. The specific guardrails or guide rails that we need to put in place for any topics that need to be avoided. This can also tie into any of those handoff triggers as well that we'll explore shortly. And then any other custom instructions that the agent needs to adhere to. So as we're going through building out any one of these, you'll see it's just a rich text box. Really anything that we can add in there is fair game. The more that you add at this point, the better. And one thing that you might notice as well is in the bottom right corner of every single one of these text boxes, there's a small optimize button. What that's there to do is help you to refine it after your core argument or your core instructions are put in place. It can help go through, rewrite it in a way that the agent is going to be able to easily parse through and understand what the objective is for the tone, what the objective is for those guardrails or those additional little settings that aren't quite captured in any of these first four boxes. You'll also see that there is a draft functionality here as well. So if over time we're refining these, maybe we have an initial tone and response style set, but a month from now, as we're analyzing it and revising it, we can go through and we can start to draft a new tone so that we can quickly tab back and forth and see how was it originally set versus what are the amendments that we're making and proposing for the updated tone or those updated guide rails moving forward as well. Once everything's set, there's just a simple publish button on the right-hand side. Next, for the knowledge, same thing, just as easy to update, just as easy to manage. On the left-hand side, we've got our content courses, just a few tabs here across the top. But here in our test portal, you can see we've got different knowledge bases, the website itself, different landing pages that we might have stored in HubSpot, the blog page, whatever else we actually have stored. In here as well, you'll be able to see anything that you're actively using that's been synced the last time it was synced. So if we're updating content over time, we can always resync whenever needed. Refresh. Now it's updated. We can also see things that maybe we were using previously, but are no longer in use. So if I'm looking at landing pages, you can see some of the pages that I'm currently using and the pages that we were using previously, but now are excluded from the agent's knowledge. When you populate the tone in the other guidelines, would you recommend using an external AI tool to help populate those instruction fields? I would initially. I really like Gemini for that, just because I find it to be a little bit more creative. And then if for whatever reason you don't want to introduce another LLM into it, or if you don't want to get into ChatGPT or Gemini for whatever reason, or your LLM of preference, you can use that optimize button to help you rewrite it. I know that there are also a bunch of other tools out there. But initially starting off, I would explain generally what the objective is, let another AI help you refine it, review it internally, and then use that in HubSpot. Good question. And then we can also use external resources here too for the knowledge base. I'm sorry, for the knowledge that we're feeding it. So if there are external URLs, for example, if your site isn't hosted on HubSpot at this point, we can start to import those on a URL by URL basis, or even specific files that we might already be sharing. Super helpful for sales or service docs, product resources that we have, or really anything similar. So to add content, it's as simple as add content, choose where the source is from. For example, if we're uploading a file here, we can access anything within our file repository within HubSpot, or we can elect to upload a brand new document. Here, I'm going to upload my example doc 2. I'm going to upload my existing document. I'm going to hit insert files. It's syncing. And now I can see my 2 documents in here. So each one of those are eligible to be used for its own knowledge for answering questions. Something else that you might notice directly from this view as well is we have the ability to enable citations. So like I was mentioning earlier, if the bot is referencing from a particular resource that we give it, a blog page, a landing page, a document that we upload, or something else, if it is usually a customer-facing record, if we're okay sharing that directly with them, we can allow citations for that directly so that the user can see in chat exactly where it came from. It's very similar to how ChatGPT cites resources now. If you ask any technical questions, especially in like a thinking mode for GPT 5.2 or 5.3, it'll go through and cite its own resources. So any of the information can be corroborated. The CRM data is also extremely neat, though this one I would definitely recommend approaching with caution. If you allow CRM data, it allows HubSpot to the HubSpot agent to ask the user their email address so that it can associate it with a record within your system. You can choose the properties that you want to reference in that. So for this one, I'm just going to use an example with coach type dropdown select property that we have. And then in here, we can allow it to be read from or view that property in chat, and then potentially even permit that agent to edit that property if we so choose. The reason why I say definitely approach with caution is there are so many different things that we're configuring all at once, potentially for any one of these agents. If we have a bunch of different properties in there that the agent can go through and begin manipulating, especially if there isn't much strategy put behind it or guardrails put in place initially, it can cause some issues with our CRM data. Definitely something that we want to avoid if possible. I would recommend using this very strategically if it is something that you do implement. Otherwise, it's just going to stick to the same knowledge-based articles or the same resources or whatever other resources that you feed it. And then finally, deployment. Once everything else has been set up for the agent, deployment can be set on a per channel basis. On the right-hand side, we can deploy agent. It needs to connect to either the inbox or the help desk if you're using Service Pro or Enterprise. Just to kind of log those communications. If there are any issues that come up, we can connect with the inbox, make sure that everything is tracked correctly. But you can see here, we also have our agent connected, at least in the test portal here, to that chat functionality. We can click right into it, and now we can start setting some even more in-depth settings for this particular agent in this particular deployment. Particular welcome messages, email capture. So how do we want to actually associate it to a record, or how do we want to be able to potentially create a new record for contact that's coming in and start and ask us questions? What do we want the AI bot to be displayed as? Do we want to give it a custom name in chat? Do we want to use a custom image or something else? What about additional knowledge-based articles that it needs to pull from? What about particular pages on the site that it needs to be deployed to, or that we definitely do not want to deploy it to? And then some other consideration options. Do we need to collect any cookies? Do we need to have any GDPR or privacy considerations in place that are relayed to the user? And then one that I find really interesting is down here at the bottom. I wish this was front and center at the very top, is the security and spam protection. I know one point of concern that some people have is, well, how do I know that it's not a bot filling this out and just really messing with my metrics or skewing my CRM data? It's kind of like CAPTCHA in this regard, where we can enable that visitor verification. If HubSpot's AI is noticing anything wonky or out of the ordinary, or chats coming through within milliseconds of one another, it can start to flag that and then automatically pause that conversation or outright reject that user from being able to use that. There are a few other things that you can explore under the deployment, but at least for getting the initial agent launched and working, really it's just that channel configuration. Identify where you want it to show and then deploy. We're going to be coming back here in just a minute as well. But I do want to jump forward just for a moment too. Michaela, the slide's all you.
All right, we got another gift card giveaway. I will go ahead and run our next winner, which is John Paul. John Paul, I believe I saw you in here earlier.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll send that information on over to you shortly, sir.
Excellent.
All right, so we took a look at generally how to deploy an agent. It's pretty quick. Go through, enable it, give it a name, give it a general tone, feed it some initial documentation, and generally it's good. We also took a look at some of those nice to have to set up, how we can deploy it, how we can put some custom guide rails in place, how we can configure a few other small things like that. But what about some more of those larger, more agent-wide considerations that we need to take into consideration? Well, when we're looking at it, despite that setup being quick, like I mentioned, the devil's really in the details for this. So what we're going to take a look at here in a moment is making sure that we're paying extra close attention to that handoff configuration. So what actually needs to happen when the bot encounters something that I can't answer, or if a particular phrase or term was used, like speak to an agent or hand off to rep or something similar. How we can audit our knowledge gaps, hopefully regularly, especially in the early weeks. And you're going to hear me harp on that here a lot over the next 10 minutes or so. And then finally, reviewing, revising, and refining that agent over time. So I'm going to hop back into HubSpot just very quickly here. And the couple things that we're going to take a look at, like I mentioned, the human handoff here under deployment, and then we're going to take a look at the performance, the knowledge gaps, and all the analytics behind it. If you know me, you know I'm a huge believer in analytics. If you're not reporting on it, if you're not tracking it, you're not improving it. Same thing is true for your bot. So the human handoff is pretty straightforward. In here, we can start to customize any triggers that we want. You can see I have a few examples in here. For example, if the customer says refund, or if the customer says speak with an agent, or even as something as simple as, I say simple, but even something like if the customer begins their conversation in Cantonese, then because HubSpot will adapt the language depending on that first message that was received, maybe we want to hand off in that case. So here we can edit the handoff process so that we actually tell the user what's going to happen. We set that expectation, and then we determine what's going to happen internally as well. So here we have three different options. We can hand off to a live agent if there is somebody actively managing the different communication channels. You can do an asynchronous handoff, basically telling the user that, I can't answer that question for you. However, I'm making a note internally, creating a ticket. One of our reps will be back in touch with you as soon as humanly possible. Or we can also elect not to hand off to anyone and just let him be stuck with that bot. Probably not the way I'd manage it, but I'm sure there are use cases for it. So the async handoff to a human agent is where I could potentially see probably the vast majority of people using this, at least initially, especially if you're using help desk or using the conversations inbox regularly. So here, it's as simple as understanding how we want to hand off to human agents, if you want to hand off all issues to the same person, or if you want to be able to route it based on the types of issues, based on the different reps and anything else that we have stored about either that contact or that conversation or that rep within the system. We can get pretty dynamic and pretty nuanced with it. And then we saw this earlier, ultimately, where do we want that conversation to be held if it does need to be handed off internally, whether it's the help desk if you're using it or that conversations inbox. Set the message, set that expectation to the user. In this case, sorry, I can't help with that. However, we'll be in touch as soon as we can help. And then what happens afterwards? So do we close the chat or do we keep the chat open just in case there is something else that the bot can assist with? Next, I mentioned auditing the knowledge gaps. So over time, invariably, the bot's going to get asked different questions that it might not have the answer to based on the knowledge, the resources that it was provided initially. So we also have the performance tab here. There are custom reports in here that I recommend taking a look at. Things like resolution time, the handoff time, how many resolutions it's actually taking and making over time. We'll get into the strategy behind this here in just a sec as well. But here under coaching, we can also see any one of the knowledge gaps. How many conversations were had where that topic was brought up? What was the topic of the question itself? When was the last time we had a conversation about that topic? This needs to be audited regularly so that any one of the resources that we fed it to answer those questions can be amended. Additionally, if the AI is getting those questions, chances are your service team could be getting those questions as well, making sure that's reflected in any documentation that they may be referencing internally.
Katie, it's just real quick, Zach. Katie, I see your hand raised. Did you have a question right now that you wanted to throw out there? Otherwise, we'll take questions at the end too.
Oh, I can wait till the end. I wasn't sure how you guys wanted to do that, so I can wait.
Okay. No worries at all. Thanks.
My next two slides here, I'm going to go through pretty quickly just because it's exactly what it just showed within HubSpot too. We can configure up to our 20 triggers depending on what's happening conversationally, and then define that handoff process again. Is it live? Is it asynchronous? Or we're just not handing it off? And then setting the expectations in chat as well as configuring it in the back end. So within HubSpot, what needs to happen? And then auditing those knowledge gaps over time. I'd recommend at least on a weekly basis, but getting there as frequently as you can if the bot is running, just to make sure that if there are regular questions coming in that you don't have an answer for, they're being addressed sooner rather than later. Chances are you'd see a lot of those conversations in the early days, especially as you're still building out that knowledge base, but time will tell. And then this is something that I've mentioned a couple times as well, but I do want to call out explicitly, just because I know that there are some misunderstandings about how a tool like this should be used and how it should be deployed. So very clearly what it is and what it isn't. The tool here, like we've seen, it's rapidly evolving. You can see my screenshot here that I have on screen. These are just some of the updates that have come through in the recent past couple of weeks. This is just part of page 1 of 5 updates and betas that are available to the tool. So where it is today is likely going to be worlds different than where it is a year from now, which is likely going to be worlds different from where it is 5 years from now. So it's a tool that's designed to be built and continually refined. It needs to be. And then what it isn't is the exact polar opposite. This is absolutely not a set it and forget it tool. It is 100% not designed to be deployed and forgotten, especially because, like we just saw, we can see all those analytics behind it. We can see when it's having issues answering questions internally. We can identify where those knowledge gaps are. We can start to refine how it's answering questions, its tone across different channels, how the users are actually interacting with it. We can see that chat history. So we need to make sure that we are leveraging all that data to continually improve the tool. So I want to leave you with an actual strategy for what that revision can look like and actually touching a little bit on that initial deployment too. So if you're getting in and you're just starting to set up the tool yourself, after you have some of that preliminary information in place for it, what I want you to do is take a quick step back and define your scope for employment. I feel like with a tool like this, many times, myself included, we get really excited to see everything that it can do, and we want it to do everything for us, probably a little bit too quickly. So especially for an agent like this, define your scope initially. What do you want it to do? Do you expect it to answer product or service facts? Is it to retrieve shipping status updates from an external source or something that's stored internally? Is it to answer questions about return policies on particular pages? Or is it something else? Set your scope and at least initially try to stick to that scope. Second, create a test of real questions pulled from your own resources. As I mentioned earlier, we probably all have a list of some frequently asked questions that we get from our contacts. We either have answers to those questions internally, stored in documents, on knowledge bases, or maybe stored a little bit more ambiguously in blogs. But understand what those common questions that you're actually getting are. Pull them from your own resources, the answers to those questions. Identify those questions that you're getting, and then start to format it in a way that your chatbot can actually go through and understand. One of the best practices for beginning to structure that data is a clear question and answer format. But as long as it's kind of structured top down with very clear headings, if it's a blog or page or a knowledge base article or something similar, and then clearly represented answers underneath, generally you'll be okay with that. Next, running through those questions with your agent as a test before you ever deploy it. You can begin testing directly within the interface at any point. It does not consume any credits. You probably saw it on the right-hand side of my screen as we were going through some of those different pages in the HubSpot portal. At any point, you can start asking it questions, see what it knows. And then take the answers, take the results of those questions, turn them into a specific baseline for that deployment for your organization. So for example, in our pilot with 100 historical tickets, the agent was able to resolve 62% accurately and quickly. And then for 37% of the remaining inquiries, it was able to successfully hand those off and it couldn't answer a question reliably. And then only 1% of the answers that it gave were inaccurate. In this case, what I'd recommend doing is looking at those questions that it had to hand off, or that 1% of questions that maybe it was slightly inaccurate with, taking it back to your knowledge base, updating the information as much as you can, filling in those gaps, trying to understand why it wasn't able to answer questions, why it was inaccurate where it was, and then retesting and deploying. And then after deployment, like I mentioned, it's not a set it and forget it tool. You don't deploy and forget it. Check in regularly, see where the knowledge gaps are, check out the handoff rates. What kind of questions is it handing off? What kind of questions isn't it? What are the resolution and deflection rates? And then what are some of the post-deployment feedback that you're getting from it as well? Are customers engaging with it? Do they generally like it? What is your team actually hearing about it? But as I mentioned probably 6 times already in this slide, this is the 7th. This is a tool to be continually optimized, never, ever, ever deployed and simply forgotten. Michaela, you're up.
Awesome. All right, this is the last one. So this will be another $200 drawing. I will go ahead and pick the names. We have Dominic as our next winner, provided that he is still here.
Yeah, we're still here.
Awesome. Well, awesome.
Amazing.
Dom, you have to share that gift card with the whole crew or what?
Yeah, I'll split it 17 ways.
Perfect. All right, we'll send that information on over to you as soon as we have it. And congratulations to all our winners. That was the last one. So yay, that was fun.
Thank you.
So now a couple of the frequently asked questions, like I said, that I usually see or I receive about the tool. First and foremost, how long does it take to set up? Like we just saw, setup can be pretty darn quick. All we need to do is create the tool itself, give it a name, give it a tone, give it some knowledge, tell it where to go, and realistically, that's it. However, all the little nuances, all the ongoing customizations, all the ongoing optimizations, it's going to take time. So while the initial tool config can be pretty quick, it can take hours and hours and hours still to make sure that it's going to perform right, to go through all the testings, to log that initial information, to see how it's going to perform, what kind of questions can it answer, what can't it answer within the scope that you've defined. How much does it cost to run? Well, the customer agent uses HubSpot's credits. Anybody with a pro or enterprise account receives 3,000 and 5,000 credits, respectively, every single month. Those credits don't roll over month to month. They are a use it or lose it kind of situation. And then one conversation just consumes 100 credits. If the conversation is revisited within 24 to 72 hours, it does not consume more credits. If the user had to log off for whatever reason or had to run, otherwise end the conversation, they can come back and pick right up where they left off. What kind of channels can it be deployed in? Well, like I mentioned earlier, right now it can be deployed in Facebook, WhatsApp, live chat, email. And like we saw when I was sharing the screen a little bit ago, it can be deployed soon in in calling as a beta tool. Though, candidly, I haven't gotten a chance to explore that option too much yet. And then, can I try before committing to it? Yeah, right now, HubSpot is offering anybody who sets it up initially, if you haven't yet, 28 days of free access. All you need to do is configure your agents, deploy it to a channel, and then as soon as it gets deployed, it's going to start that 28-day timer. A couple important things to note for that: you can edit and you can pause the agent at any point during that 28 days and following. However, once an agent is deployed, it cannot be deleted at this point. You can always go through and edit it to your heart's content, though, essentially making an entirely new agent each time. But after that 28 days of free access, if you don't pause it, if you don't otherwise tell it to stop, it will start using those free credits, and those free credits reset on your monthly reset date. It can be a little bit different for everybody. So what questions do you guys have? We covered a lot in a very short amount of time.
Going to the credit question. So if you run over your credits, then I assume you're going to be billed for anything over.
Not if you don't have it set or if you haven't purchased additional credits. Once it gets to the end of those free credits, it pauses. Any of the AI tools within HubSpot, whether it's in a workflow or the chatbot, will simply be paused until the next month starts, unless you elect to purchase more credits.
Okay, so I figure with 3,000 credits, that's about 30 conversations.
Yep.
My next question is, you mentioned Service Hub. We don't have Service Hub any longer here. So can it be deployed to, how else could it be used through Sales Hub?
Yeah, if you have marketing, sales, service, content, or Data Hub Pro or Enterprise, you have access to the tool.
No, I see I have access. I was just wondering how that ticket process works since you don't have Service Hub.
Oh, do you have you still have the conversations box though, to connect the channel in case anything needs to be handed off internally?
Nope, it was turned off.
I don't have an answer. I know you can still use it. I'm just not sure how that ticketing process would be handled if it just creates a standard ticket in the otherwise free pipeline. Josh or Michaela, do you guys know offhand?
Do you have any other paid products? Do you have like Sales Pro or
We
marketing?
have Sales Pro. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as Zach had mentioned, the help desk would be turned off, which is a Service Hub specific, but you should still have access to the shared inbox, which is what can transition those conversations to a human. Zach, is that correct from your understanding?
Yeah, that's how I understood it. But if you're saying that you don't have access to the inbox, that might just be something that you need to take a separate look at, whether it's an access issue or something similar.
Let us know
It
if you
should still
want
be
to
there.
schedule some time, like do a quick screen share with Zach or whoever, and we can help you work through that.
Yeah, I can check with my IT and see how what they did in regards to Service Hub and accessing that shared inbox. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So if there's another question here in chat. My org uses Customer Agent on our website. We have a use case where new prospects are coming to our site and interacting with the Customer Agent. Ideally, this prospect would come into HubSpot as a lead. Contact record created and lead record created. Is this a scenario you've seen other companies use? Yeah, it can. If you start to prompt it as like at the beginning of that conversation or elsewhere to start to collect the email, so it can start to create that record for you. You can have it do that. You might have to give it access to write to additional properties as well, like we saw, just to start to fill in some of those initial data points. But yes, it can be and is commonly used as a initial prospecting tool too, to answer some of those questions and get the contact and the lead in the system. What other questions do you guys have at this point?
Zach, can it access deal or order information? So if I'm waiting for something to come to me, I had a sale through you, and now you added like a shipment date. Can I chat with Customer Agent and be like, when am I getting my shipment?
Yeah, it can reference anything stored in the CRM in that way. Additionally, if there's like some third-party integration that you're using that's storing that information through the new Actions menu, we didn't really get a chance to explore that today. It can, via API, query additional systems to pull the information that it would need to. There are explicit instructions in those pages to tell you exactly how to set it up, as well as examples.
do you have information on, like, let's say Michaela ordered something, or you had a sale with her, and I just happen to know that Michaela ordered something, and I'm like, what did Michaela order? And you don't want me to know what Michaela bought through you. Can the customer agent differentiate the two of us so that it doesn't tell me the details about Michaela's deal?
I think you just need to have that identifying information that Michaela would likely have to willingly give over, an order number, shipping number, or something similar to be able to match it to the order that you're trying to query.
Okay. I know she wouldn't do that.
No, never.
Never.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, this is how you can reach us after this. We'll also send the recording for those of you that weren't able to join for the whole time. And apologies if there were any confusions with the invite link when we have our next hug next quarter, unless it happens sooner. That issue should not be there. It should be a normal process for our next one. If anyone has ideas of things that they would like us to cover, pass those along. We're always looking for new topics that you think would be interesting. So reach out, chat with us, book a meeting. If you want to talk to Zach more about Customer Agent or any of the other agents in HubSpot, please do so.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And if
everybody.
you
Nice
I will
job,
be in
Zach.
touch, so keep an eye out for my email. And I'll get those over to you soon.
I'll hang
Thanks.
out in the call just for another minute or so in case anybody has any lingering questions and wants to stick around too.
Tori, you've been so consistent at all of these. Was there confusion with the link in the?
Yes, and I finally dug through and found it. And also, I was tackling another big issue. We just got Service Hub Enterprise like a week ago, and so we're still trying to figure out. We haven't had an Enterprise yet, and so we're trying to figure out the best way to use our custom objects and stuff. And I noticed that a lot of the goals seem to be revenue based, whereas a B2B manufacturer, we also have quantities where we want to sell a certain amount of quantity. We set quantity goals for each of our dealers for months. And so I'm wondering if I can create a custom object and use that with goals to set those goals.
Which you got Service Hub Enterprise?
Yes. Only because that was the cheapest. And we do provide service. We do provide 12-year warranties on our products. So we do definitely, need the service. But that we could get, 2 licenses and get enterprise versus some of the others that were a lot more expensive.
Let me pull something up really quick here, because I know you can do custom goals, which could look at something like that specific I don't know, property, I guess. But that may be a sales enterprise thing. Where is that property stored? So like number of units, for example.
So we have a separate ERP that we set the goals and have all of our accounting and all of our inventory management and everything in, and then we're pulling that information into HubSpot. So our sales reps, when they pull up a customer, they can see, okay, these are the goals for this customer. And we have hundreds of customers. And so we have different goals for, like, this part, they're supposed to sell 10 in January, 13 in February. For this other part, they're supposed to sell 7 in January and stuff like that. So we want them to be able, when they pull up that company, to be able to see all those goals. And it'd be nice to be able to use, the goals.
Yeah. So again, I'm not positive. This might be a sales enterprise only thing, but if it is something that you can use, you would have this create from scratch.
We do.
Option.
Yep. we do have that.
And then we would choose the object type. So in your case, it sounds like that would be stored probably on the company.
Well, what I was thinking is to create a custom object.
Oh, so instead of
goals.
pulling from company,
Yeah.
you might pull from
Because this is,
equipment.
we have a lot of different goals. It's part based. So it's per month, per part, per customer.
So then your custom object might be customer goal.
Mhm.
Let's just use one of these other custom objects here. Purchase. See if there's something in here. Cabling volume meters.
There you go.
Could be our goal, and we would aggregate based on some of that goal. And if you're looking at this, I guess this would be create date maybe, or you might have a specific date like goal date. Let's just use create date for now. And tracking method, higher value is better. So then I say next. Demo goal units. I can't spell. These should be the same. So we'll just assign this to Zach.
Yep.
And we'll
perfect.
say next. And then here is where you would assign that. So if this is a monthly goal, you would assign, let's just say it's 30. You can apply to all of those across the board and then adjust them individually if you want.
Yep.
That should be exactly what you're looking for.
Exactly. Yep.
If you don't see any of those things, certainly let me know.
What does the display look like?
When you're looking
So we have the targets, and so show how they're doing compared to the targets, or is that something you configure in a report?
No. So after you start to work with this goal, if I go to the goals here, you can look at your, here's one view of this. So this is total progress to goal. So Zach's at 0%. He better get to work. You can also look at that weekly, monthly, or quarterly. So if I break this down quarterly, he's looking at it this way. And then you can also apply these goals to dashboards and reports.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that will work perfect.
So the goals functionality is nice, especially when you open up enterprise and you're able to look at those custom, goals for things like units.
Yep. Sounds good. And the other thing is, it seems like line items they don't work for tickets. It would be nice if they worked for tickets.
There's a new beta that does that.
Oh, great.
It's brand new. It came out maybe a month ago, maybe less. And I honestly, hopefully it's a public beta, not a private beta.
Yeah, maybe it's Friday. I brought it up and they had to ask me anything, and I brought that up as.
Yeah, so they allow them now to be associated with custom objects and some other objects.
Yeah, I saw that could be associated with custom objects, so I didn't understand why it wouldn't be able to be associated with tickets.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can associate it. I thought we tested that, Zach. Do you remember that?
I know that. I think we're participating in the custom objects line items, or maybe it's always available as an associated.
Let me see here.
But
associations will enable another. Let me make sure I didn't already do this. Maybe you can't. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess it just is custom objects for now, which I agree doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you can associate it with all of these other objects,
right,
but not a ticket, when a service company would I'm pretty sure that I did that on a hub though recently. So that's odd. Let me dig into that a little bit more, and if I find anything else out, I'll let you know.
That'd be great. Because we do RMAs and labor claims, and so we have to pick what item.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, let us know if you have any other questions.
Yeah. Sorry I missed your talk, and if you would send out the video, that would be great. I love everything you guys do. I always benefit a lot from it. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's great feedback.
Thank you. That video will be over shortly once it finishes rendering. I'll send it out to everyone. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tori.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.